My journey with in, on, and at. I'm Laura, and today I want to share with you an important part of my English learning journey. I always had trouble with prepositions, especially in, on, and at. At first, everything seemed confusing. I didn't know when to use each of these prepositions. Even when I knew the translation, I couldn't always apply them correctly. I clearly remember when I first started studying English and prepositions began appearing in sentences. The first time I encountered them was during a simple activity at school. I had to describe where objects were in a room. I looked at the picture and thought, okay, I can do this. And that's when everything started. The first mistake in versus on. In the first sentence, I wrote something like, "The book is in the table." And it seemed so right in my head. After all, the book was there, along with other things in the room. My teacher, Mrs. Clara, came over and asked, "Laura, are you sure about this sentence?" I looked again and replied, "Yes." The book is on the table, so I used in. She smiled and explained, "Actually, Laura, we say, the book is on the table, because on is used for something that's on a surface, like a table." At that moment, my mind got tangled up. What do you mean? I thought. But why on and not in? I had already learned that in means inside, so why not use it? She calmly explained that we use on to indicate that something is on a surface. That's why the book is on the table and not in the table. It was then that I realized my journey with prepositions was just beginning. The confusion with in. After that, I started paying more attention. But the confusion didn't end there. One day, we were talking about where we lived, and I said, "I live on Brazil." Again, it seemed right to me. My logic was, I am on the land of Brazil, so on felt correct. My teacher, with her usual patient smile, corrected me, "Laura, in English, we say, I live in Brazil." We use in for countries, cities, and larger places. I was surprised. So, whenever I talk about countries and cities, I use in. She confirmed. That's when things started to make more sense. In is for larger places, like countries, cities, and even neighborhoods. And we also use in to indicate when something is inside a closed space, like a room or a box. More examples with in. After that, I began practicing. I would say to myself, "Okay, Laura, you live in Brazil, you study in a classroom, you keep your books in a bag." These repetitions helped me reinforce the idea. But in isn't just for places. It's also used for time. That's how I learned to use in with months, years, and parts of the day. For example, I was born in July. I'll see you in 2024. I have breakfast in the morning. I realize that whenever I talk about something happening within a larger period, like months or years, I should use in. This made things much simpler for me. What about on? Now, on seemed easier. After understanding that on was used for surfaces, I started practicing with sentences like, the phone is on the table, the picture is on the wall. Whenever something was on top of something else, I knew to use on. But then, another question arose. And when we talk about time? When do we use on? Mrs. Clara explained that we use on 4 days of the week and specific dates. So, I would say, I have a meeting on Friday. My birthday is on July 15th. That was another light at the end of the tunnel. I finally began to understand the rules. It felt great to see that I could now distinguish when to use on for places and time. But of course, more doubts kept coming up. And there was still at. The challenge with at. At. This one was tricky. I remember always saying something like, I am in the bus stop, but that felt strange. Again, Mrs. Clara came to my rescue. She explained that we use at to talk about specific locations, like exact points. So, the correct way would be, I am at the bus stop. And she continued, we also use at for exact times, like, the meeting is at 3 p.m. It was one of those moments when everything finally clicked. I finally understood that at is used to talk about a specific point in time or space. Practicing with in, on, and at. I began practicing more and more. Every day, I created sentences to practice the prepositions. I live in Brazil, but I work at a company in Sao Paulo. My meeting is on Monday, and it starts at 9 a.m. The book is on the shelf in my room. Over time, everything started making more sense. In for larger places and periods of time, on for surfaces and dates, and at for specific locations and exact times. I felt like I was finally mastering these prepositions. The conclusion of my journey. Now, whenever I see a sentence with in, on, or at, I pause and think, I understand this. Of course, I still make mistakes sometimes, but practice has helped me a lot. I realize that these prepositions can be tricky, but with patience and practice, everything becomes clearer. If you're learning English and find these prepositions difficult, remember my journey. I also felt confused at the beginning, but with dedication, you can learn to use them correctly too.